As the medical industry works tirelessly towards finding cures for a wide range of diseases, the ambitious Dr. Isabel Ruben leads a small team of experts in their pursuit of slowing down the aging process. Her promise of innovative medical treatments and state-of-the-art facilities have drawn many wealthy individuals seeking to turn back time. One night, Mia, the wife of the company's owner, decides to surprise her husband Thomas by entering their room in nothing but her birthday suit as an attempt to initiate some intimacy. However, he refuses to engage with her. Puzzled and slightly hurt, Mia heads down the stairs only to receive a strange mail from Dr. Ruben. It contains a close-up picture depicting 14K burned onto what appeared to be human skin. The following day, Thomas watches an interview with Dr. Ruben regarding their latest invention called Resurrecta, a revolutionary medical treatment that can supposedly restore youthfulness if used properly and carefully within the confines of their specialized facility. The interviewer asked several questions concerning its efficacy, cost-effectiveness, and ethical implications associated with this new technology. Reacting calmly despite being bombarded with difficult questions, Isabel confidently explains that aging is an ailment just like any other disease humans experience and therefore deserves proper treatment too. After watching the interview, Thomas calls Isabel immediately to further discuss on this matter. Meanwhile, Mia goes out for a morning jog when she randomly bumps into one of her neighbor's nannies who was looking after her baby boy at that time. They share brief pleasantries before Mia continues on with her run, feeling refreshed and calm from this chance encounter. Just in time, Isabel greets the women and applauds them on the beauty of both their baby and Nika's stunning hair. The doctor reaches out to delicately hold a strand between her fingers and is mesmerized by its texture. As she moves to free her hand from the tousled locks, she slyly pulls away a section of Nika's hair and hastily tucks it away in her pocket. Mia leads the way towards their humble abode, conversing with Isabel about the condition of her horse, which was determined to be perfect for conceiving, until Thomas abruptly interrupts them by opening the door. The businessman sternly declares that this project must remain a secret until they can gather enough funds to finance the facilities. In response, Isabel reveals evidence supporting their progress through pictures of one particular patient. In response, Isabel is given advice on how best to attract her husband's interest, which results in Mia dressing herself up later that night in an attempt to seduce him, yet is left disappointed once he turns away from her unexpectedly. He explains that he can never give Mia what she desires due to his infertility, which leaves her feeling powerless and disheartened as she storms out of their home. On her way back home, Nika suddenly finds herself being bumped into by an unknown male before eventually succumbing to paralysis moments later after taking a few steps forward. To make matters worse, a small truck quickly stops beside her only for two men to drag Nika inside against her will before drugging her with an anesthetic meant for cows. Despite struggling against the effects of the drug, Nika manages to hear one remark from one of them about using medicine on her before becoming unconscious again as one person produces a rod before proceeding to heat its tip menacingly high above her head. Meanwhile, Mia returns to their room and the couple reconciles by embracing each other warmly. Upon hearing the strangers debating over the sudden roadblock, Nika takes the opportunity to push open the door and roll away from the vehicle. She instinctively darts off into a nearby bush to hide as the truck departs. The following day, Isabel receives a new client named Johansson who wishes to look younger. Isabel requests that he signs a non-disclosure agreement before they could discuss details of the treatment. Afterward, she presents her portfolio of clients, which displays her credibility in carrying out treatments. Then she writes down an amount in cryptocurrency which has to be paid for the treatment before they can begin with preparations such as collecting male seed, a mouth swab, and blood extraction. The patient further inquiries about his treatment, but Isabel chooses to ignore him, making him increasingly uneasy about being kept in the dark. This forces her to usher him out of her office. At home, Thomas prepares his breakfast smoothie while Mia comments on how incorrect their factory labels seem and points out that Thomas is not a medical doctor despite claiming otherwise on their packaging labels. To prove his point, he challenges Mia's estimation of Isabel's age, which she claims is around 40 but is actually 61, much to Mia's shock and surprise. Suddenly someone starts banging violently on their door, causing them both alarm until they realize it's Nika outside looking disheveled and drenched in blood with D17 branded on her shoulder. Thomas immediately feels perturbed whilst Mia quickly calls out for him to get a towel, having to shout again due to his preoccupation, which he eventually does, allowing Mia time with Nika as she comforts her emotionally. Thomas insists on taking Nika straight away to hospital, though Mia encourages him instead to take along their nanny for company and reassurance. With the sun setting, Mia grows increasingly anxious about Thomas's whereabouts, so she sends him a voice message to return as soon as possible. But that evening he still has not returned, which compels Mia to call up all the nearby hospitals asking if they have admitted a woman named Nika, none of which had any record of her being admitted. Meanwhile, in the distance, Thomas's car pulls up outside a sinister-looking building with no signs or lights, when suddenly its door opens and someone drags Nika inside it, catching Thomas by surprise, though he takes no action whatsoever. Due to Mia's mounting anxiety, she was compelled to open Thomas's computer and track his phone location. It was at that moment when a message from her husband arrived out of the blue, informing her that their daughter Nika had been hospitalized. Suspecting something fishy with the discrepancy between her husband's whereabouts and the troubling notification, Mia grabs her car keys and rushes to the facility. Thomas, on the other hand, had entered the facility in search of Isabel. He confronts the doctor regarding the man who dragged Nika away. The doctor reveals that it was a caretaker they hired, nicknamed Dog, with an assistant referred to as Pig. While it appears that the women he had been taking care of were volunteers, Isabel reminds him that it was impossible. The doctor then shows Thomas a picture of a woman named Ellie on her computer, and in response to this, the man conveys his guilt. Just then, Mia arrives at the facility. She enters an abandoned building, and while exploring, the floor suddenly collapses. She saves herself and continues her investigation, eventually finding the supplements her husband's company sells. As she hears a crying woman, Mia follows the sound and finds another woman tied to a table being electrocuted by Dog. Pig then appears behind her, but Mia bravely fights him off and runs away, unfortunately tripping and falling shortly afterwards. The older man grins at her, but Dog knocks her out before anything else can happen. Mia regains consciousness to find herself being dragged by Dog into a sealed room. Meanwhile, Thomas had returned home to discover that his wife had tracked him down, and so he called Isabel, who confirmed Mia's presence at the facility. With this, the man heads back to save his wife. Dog then commands Mia to change clothes in front of him, but the woman courageously refuses, only to eventually acquiesce out of fear. Thomas advises Mia not to try to escape on her own, promising to get her out soon, but also warns her that they could be killed if they try. The doctor confiscates Thomas's phone and tells him not to leave the premises. Mia looks for something useful in her room while the alarm sounds, signaling that Nika is trying to escape. Nika ends up being killed by Pig with a metal bar, and the caretakers dispose of the body. Isabel meets with Johan's son, who is excited about the possibility of the treatment, making him look 20 years younger. In exchange for the treatment, Isabel raises the price by 50%. The doctor resumes her research with one of the women, warning the caretaker not to touch the subjects, especially Mia, as she is essential to the research. Despite numerous attempts, Thomas finally manages to unlock Mia's door and the couple is reunited. Mia asks Thomas about a woman named 14K, whose picture she saw. Thomas slowly confesses that the girl's name was Ellie, someone he had met 6 months prior at a party attended by both him and Isabel. The doctor had introduced her to them, mentioning she was his type, though Thomas could barely recall the details of the night due to being quite intoxicated. All that he could remember was that Ellie wanted to be tied up, and the next thing he knew was that her lifeless body was lying on the bed as he had looked out the window. It was then that Dr. Isabel had confirmed that Ellie had passed away. Thomas then drags Mia to the room where Isabel, Dog, and Pig are. He declares that she knows too much and must be taken care of. With her sobs of anguish echoing throughout the room, Thomas succumbs to Isabel's demands. After a short discussion on who will dispose of the woman, Thomas prevails and grabs a knife with which he intends to do it himself. He cuts Mia loose in the hallway so she can escape, but the caretakers see them and the chase begins. Thomas attempts to block his pursuers as Pig beats him unconscious while Dog looks for Mia. Fortunately, the equestrian finds a car and manages to get away, at least momentarily. Dog eventually captures her again when she fails to start the engine of the vehicle, and Pig enters Isabel's office, informing her that they finally have a DNA match, which is none other than Mia herself. Dog prepares to eliminate Mia as Pig arrives to retrieve her for the procedure. She is knocked out again and regains consciousness, tied to an operating table in a cold and sterile room. The doctor calmly examines her ovaries to look for a healthy egg, and with tears streaming down her face, Mia begs Isabel not to take it from her. But it's too late. The doctor begins to implant a client's seed into it. Mia is brought to her new cell. In the cell, she sees other women, some of whom are pregnant, including Ellie, who is alive. Mia meets Julie, who is also pregnant, and the woman asks her about the possibility of escape. Helena, a woman in an adjacent cell, is crying in pain and warns them to stay quiet. Ellie speaks to Mia and tells her that her husband thought she was dead. The pregnant woman explains that she was tricked by Isabel, who promised to release her if she followed a certain plan. Dog hears the commotion and finds Helena whimpering in pain from a toothache. He cruelly removes the tooth with pliers and then staples her mouth shut to stop her from sobbing. Ellie cannot bear to watch the scene and insults Dog, who goes to her cell and beats her up break despite her being pregnant, causing her water to. The quiet woman tells Mia to get the keys, and she successfully frees the ladies. The group goes in search of the baby and finds a room with a foul smell. Inside, they discover babies' bodies thrown away like garbage. They hear a baby crying and rush towards the sound. Meanwhile, Helena approaches the wounded Dog on the floor and cradles him, trying to comfort him. Thomas regains consciousness and looks for weapons and keys. He frees 2 other women from a cell and gives them the key to free the others. In the laboratory, Isabel, aided by Pig, begins to cut into the baby's back as it cries in pain. Ellie and the others arrive just in time to stop the doctor from dissecting the baby. However, the doctor threatens to stab the infant, causing the women to pause their attack. The doctor takes the opportunity to escape, but Pig blocks the women. In the ensuing struggle, Mia grabs a chain from the wall and wraps it around Pig's neck. Meanwhile, Isabel heads to her lab to take DNA samples before escaping. As she runs out of the facility, she runs into the newly freed women who attack her, smashing her test tubes. Dog is found tied up to a metal compartment, while Isabel is restrained to a pole. The caretaker tries to keep his pride by shouting at the women, but Mia's friend, the quiet one, steps on him and urinates on him as he did them before branding them. Mia and Thomas regain their peaceful life and their love for each other grows as they overcome these challenges. Thomas also proves himself as a renewed person when he accepts Nika as his own, Mia's baby. The two are now living happily and securely, knowing that they will never face such nightmare again.